how is it that we are going to make sure, what takeaways do we need to ensure that we're really going to serve our listener at their level?
Yes. So there's 7 different things that make up what we call a binge-worthy content formula, which takes into account everything we're talking about today from a psychology perspective. What I want to do for your community, Adam, is give you one of these ways right now that you can walk away with and apply to your podcast immediately to see results. So the first thing, or the first step that you want to do, is you need to schedule an hour or 2 away from work, away from your podcast. Make sure you don't have any distractions during that time. Maybe go to a coffee shop. Don't bring your laptop. Put your phone on airplane mode and bring a notebook and a pen. Carve this time out. That's often the hardest step, because what I'm going to give you next are the how-tos. And then you're going to write this down. You're going to want to get to it, and then you're never going to get to it. So go ahead and put that time on your calendar right now. Block it out to date with yourself and your podcast listener, even though it's really just going to be you writing in that notebook. Okay. So once you've done that, what you're going to do is you're going to go to that coffee shop, order your favorite coffee, sit down at a table, open up that notebook, and I want you to draw a vertical line down the sheet of paper that you open to. You're going to write 2 very important things on either side of this line. On the right side of the line, I want you to think about your listener. Best case scenario, your listener is a real person. It's a client that you've worked with that you've said to yourself, oh my gosh, if every client could be just like Susie or just like John, I'd be in heaven. My business would be amazing, right? Think about that person, because especially if you're podcasting for business, which is a lot of the people we serve, they're podcasting. Yeah, they want to get their message out into the world, but they also want to drive traffic back to, their offers, their courses, their programs, their consulting. So your ideal listener is going to match who that client is. If your podcast is the business, or if you don't have a business that you're driving people to, this is still going to matter, because we still have to be clear on who we're talking to every time we get behind the mic. So I want you to picture a real person for this exercise if you can. And on the right side of that paper, I want you to spend about 10 minutes just brain dumping. What is it that this person wants in their life? What do they want? For me, in the context of podcasting, well, it's a top 100 podcast. It's authority. It's visibility. It's to be seen. It's to be known. It's to be heard. It's to be valued. It's to create an impact. It's to generate sales, even though that's not the main driver, but they want to see that the impact they're creating is measurable. And money is a way that we do that. And I would just brainstorm. What are the things that your listener wants? Then, when you feel like you've exhausted that from your brain, you're going to move to the left side of your paper, and you're going to write down what's the opposite of those things. If they want a top 100 podcast, what's the opposite of that? A podcast with 10 downloads an episode, a podcast that never ranks, maybe even a podcast that charts once every other month, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. They can't figure out, or they're rocking it over there in Slovenia, but never in the US or the UK or wherever they're based. What is the opposite of that? And go through that line by line. If someone wants more visibility, what's the opposite of that? It's being invisible. It's creating content that gets overlooked. So you can start to identify what are the opposites of what they want. Those are going to be the problems that they're experiencing. We want to make that more specific, because more visibility, kind of general, it's kind of vague, right? Getting overlooked, still kind of general and kind of vague. But when you go back through, and what we talked about earlier in this episode with making these things specific through numbers, or through painting verbal pictures, I could say, okay, my listener wants a top 100 podcast because they want to create an impact and they want to create meaningful change in the world with their message. But right now, and here's where getting overlooked gets specific. Right now, they're spending 3 or more hours a week on content creation for platforms like Instagram and TikTok. They're putting their best stuff into those posts that they know is highly valuable, but they're hitting post, and that post is getting buried in the news feed within 24 hours. Nobody sees it. 3 to 5 people maybe like it, and 0 people reach out asking to work with them. So now I just took that feeling of getting overlooked or being invisible and made it really specific for my specific person. That's the high level look at this is literally the exercise you're going to do. From there, then you can begin to create content from the problems. So for that listener, for me anyway, in this context of this example, who's creating high value posts for Instagram, that they spent 3 hours that week creating and get 0 DMs from. Now I can create a podcast episode that says something like why short form content is the slowest way to grow your audience. And now that's going to get their attention because there's a part of them that thinks that short form content is a faster way to grow. That's why they're spending so much time on it, because they want that visibility. They want that audience growth. But now I can come in with an episode that says, actually, hold on a minute, that's the slowest way to do it. And then in the episode, describe why and what they need to be doing instead.